There are moments when heaven whispers to your spirit before your mind can even catch up. Moments when your heart beats faster because something inside you knows. This promise is yours. You weren't drawn to this word by accident. You were summoned by destiny, pulled by faith, awakened by a divine hunger for more peace, more provision, more purpose. And today, Psalm 112 breathes life into your expectation and dares you to believe bigger than you ever have before. Psalm 112 declares that wealth and riches are in the house of the righteous. Not someday, not after struggle defines you, in the house. That means provision is not chasing you. You're already standing where it lives. When your heart aligns with God's word, limitation loses its voice. Fear has no language in faith. Poverty is not a badge of humility. Obedience is the true wealth starter. You don't beg for blessings. You position yourself to receive them. Faith doesn't ask how, faith declares now. When you delight greatly in the Word, miracles respond. Doors open quietly, resources show up unexpectedly, ideas multiply, contracts favor, wisdom and supernatural supply align because faith is a law, and laws work every time. $1 million miracles are not about money, they're about impact. They're about becoming a conduit where God can trust you with abundance because your heart is anchored and your hands are open. You were never meant to survive. You were called to overflow. When light rises in darkness, confusion must leave. When the righteous speak, provision listens. Declare the word, expect abundance. Walk like the promise already knows your address. Psalm 112 is not poetry, it's covenant, and covenant never fails. You didn't arrive at this moment by chance, coincidence, or curiosity. Something deeper than logic pulled on your heart, something older than time itself, whispered your name when you weren't listening. Long before you searched for answers, heaven had already marked you for this encounter. Divine assignment does not announce itself loudly. It tugs gently, persistently, until your spirit responds. There are moments when the soul recognizes truth before the mind understands it, when tears rise without explanation, when hope stirs even after disappointment has tried to bury it. That stirring is not emotional, it is spiritual alignment. You are here because destiny summoned you and assignment found you willing enough to listen. God has a way of ordering steps so perfectly that even delays become directions. Every closed door redirected you. Every setback refined you. Every silent season trained your ears to hear more clearly. Divine assignment doesn't follow the path of comfort. It follows the path of purpose, and purpose always knows where to find you. What you feel right now is not excitement, it is recognition. Something eternal is confirming that you belong here, that this word fits you, that this moment connects with a plan already written over your life. When divine assignment pulls you, it bypasses natural qualifications and speaks directly to destiny. You may feel unprepared, unworthy, or uncertain, but assignment is never about your readiness. It is about heaven's intention. God never consults your past to authorize your future. He calls you while you are still questioning, still learning, still breaking free from old labels. That is how grace operates. Assignment finds you when you think you are searching, but in reality you are being summoned. There is a reason familiar strength rose up while listening, a reason resistance weakened, a reason faith felt close again. Assignment activates recognition. It awakens what was dormant. You are not late. You are not behind. You are not overlooked. Timing is part of calling, and this moment exists because seasons have shifted in your favor. When divine assignment arrives, it aligns people, words, and opportunities that confirm what your heart has quietly known. The hunger for more is not greed. It is evidence that you are created for increase. Heaven does not tease the heart with desires it never intends to fulfill. Divine assignment separates you without isolating you. It calls you out while keeping you grounded. You begin to notice that certain conversations no longer satisfy you, certain limitations no longer convince you, certain fears no longer intimidate you the way they once did. That is not arrogance, it is alignment. Assignment reshapes appetite. You start craving purpose over popularity, impact over approval, obedience over ease. You realize that you were never meant to merely exist. You were designed to carry something. Light responds to assignment. Favor recognizes it. Doors begin to unlock naturally, not because you forced them, but because you arrived at them on time. Even resistance serves assignment by strengthening conviction. Opposition sharpens clarity. Pressure produces authority. What once intimidated you now trains you. What once limited you now instructs you. Assignment invites responsibility before reward, commitment before comfort, faith before evidence. That is why this pull feels serious, sacred, and weighty. Heaven does not casually assign destinies. When you are drawn, it means something valuable is trusted to you. Something meaningful is expected through you. You may wonder why others don't feel what you feel, see what you see, expect what you expect. That difference is assignment speaking. Not everyone is called to carry the same weight, endure the same refining, or reach the same level of responsibility. Comparison dissolves once assignment becomes clear. You stop measuring progress by others' timelines and start honoring your own obedience. Assignment does not rush, it prepares. It builds depth before exposure, character before increase, faith before manifestation. What looks slow on the surface is intentional. Underground, roots grow quietly, strength forms privately, conviction settles deeply. When the season changes, what was hidden emerges with power. You are not being ignored, you are being equipped. Heaven is strategic with vessels it plans to use publicly. The waiting is not denial. The waiting is investment. Assignment does not waste seasons. Every moment carries instruction. Every silence carries direction. Every challenge carries preparation for authority you have not yet stepped into. Divine assignment ultimately pulls you toward responsibility greater than self-interest. It invites you to think beyond survival and into stewardship. What you carry is not meant to stop with you. Blessings flow through assignment, not around it. When heaven entrusts you, it also expects multiplication. Influence expands where obedience remains steady. Faith matures when trust replaces control. You begin to understand that provision, opportunity, and breakthrough are not rewards for effort, but responses to alignment. The more aligned you become, the more naturally things begin to shift. You recognize divine orchestration in events that once felt random. Your confidence is no longer loud, it is settled. Your expectation is no longer frantic, it is anchored. Assignment produces calm authority. You move differently, you speak differently, you believe differently. Not because circumstances changed first, but because calling clarified identity. When identity aligns with assignment, limitation loses its argument, fear loses its leverage, and faith takes its rightful place as a dominant voice shaping every step you take. Faith is not a feeling you wait for, it is a position you choose. Long before anything changes on the outside, faith takes its stand on the inside and refuses to move. Overflow never responds to desperation, panic, or striving. It responds to confidence rooted in trust. Faith speaks when evidence is silent and stands firm when circumstances argue. It declares that supply already exists even when your hands appear empty. Faith dares to agree with what God has spoken rather than what the world is shouting. That agreement opens doors that effort alone can never unlock. Overflow begins the moment you stop asking whether it is possible and start believing that it is already established. Faith does not chase abundance, it aligns with it. It understands that heaven operates on laws, and belief is one of them. When faith takes authority, limitation loses permission to dominate your thinking. Fear may attempt to speak, but faith decides what is final. That inner decision shifts atmosphere, posture, and expectation. Overflow follows alignment, not explanation. Faith does not require you to understand how the supply will arrive, only that it cannot be denied. Faith accesses overflow because it positions you in agreement with provision already prepared. Heaven does not create blessing at the moment of your need. It reveals what was already assigned. Faith recognizes access before manifestation. It operates from certainty rather than suspense. When faith is active, you stop watching the clock and start watching alignment. Timing becomes less about waiting and more about readiness. Overflow flows toward belief that can carry its weight. Faith strengthens capacity. It expands vision so abundance does not overwhelm integrity. Small thinking cannot manage large supply. That is why faith renews the mind before resources multiply. Overflow with faith creates pressure. Overflow with faith creates peace. Belief anchors you so that increase does not shift your identity or distort your purpose. Faith trains the heart to handle more without losing focus. When you choose faith, you choose stability in the middle of expansion. Heaven trusts vessels that remain consistent. Faith proves reliability before release. Overflow answers faith because faith demonstrates readiness. Where faith governs, fear cannot dominate. Fear draws boundaries around potential, but faith erases those lines and restores original design. Overflow does not arrive where fear is entertained daily. Doubt weakens capacity, but faith enlarges it. The more confidently you believe, the more freely supply moves. Faith refuses to reduce expectation to match past disappointment. It does not borrow limitations from history. Faith understands that yesterday's scarcity does not define today's access. What was delayed does not mean it was denied. Faith responds differently to resistance. It does not collapse under pressure. It interprets resistance as confirmation of movement. Overflow often meets opposition because increase attracts attention. Faith does not argue with adversity, it outgrows it. It looks beyond the visible and decisions begin to change. You move with intention, you speak with authority, you expect outcomes without agitation. Faith does not force doors open, it recognizes the ones already unlocked. Overflow follows recognition. Faith is the access point because it establishes spiritual posture. You receive according to expectation, not need. Need focuses on lack. Faith focuses on supply. What you focus on multiplies in awareness. Faith keeps its attention fixed on promise. That focus shapes daily choices, reactions, and priorities. Overflow responds to consistency. Faith is consistent even when emotions fluctuate. It does not depend on motivation, it relies on conviction. Conviction remains steady when feelings shift. Faith anchors behavior. It trains patience without passivity and confidence without arrogance. Overflow requires discipline as much as desire. Faith disciplines the mind to expect good without forcing outcomes. It removes urgency and replaces it with assurance. Assurance invites flow. When pressure leaves, clarity enters. Faith allows you to rest while still advancing. That rest is not inactivity. It is trust in process. Overflow moves where trust removes resistance. Faith removes resistance by settling the heart. Faith keeps overflow connected to purpose rather than consumption. Supply without faith invites misuse, but supply with faith produces stewardship. Faith remembers source. It refuses to idolize abundance. Overflow becomes sustainable when faith governs motive. What flows through hands anchored in faith multiplies rather than diminishes. Faith honors instruction. It responds when direction is given. Overflow depends on obedience remaining intact under expansion. Faith keeps obedience central even when fruit increases. That alignment preserves flow. When faith leads, pride loses influence, impulse decreases, and discernment sharpens. Faith guards the heart while overflow fills the house. It keeps perspective clear. When increase expands, faith ensures that increase deepens gratitude rather than entitlement. Overflow remains healthy in a faith-centered life because faith keeps God as provider rather than resource. That awareness protects peace, identity, and clarity as abundance continues to rise. Wealth was never designed to define identity. It was designed to extend impact. The moment wealth becomes the goal, purpose shrinks and pressure increases. But when wealth is understood as a tool, it takes its rightful place as a servant, not a master. A tool exists to accomplish an assignment, not to replace the reason the assignment exists. Wealth follows alignment the same way breath follows life. You do not chase air, it flows naturally when lungs are healthy. In the same way, provision flows when motive is pure and direction is clear. Wealth in the hands of someone anchored in purpose remains calm, focused, and effective. It does not inflate ego or distort values, because it was never expected to provide identity. When wealth is treated as a tool, fear of loss weakens. Because value is no longer attached to possession, peace is preserved because security is anchored elsewhere. This understanding allows increase to arrive without disrupting integrity. Wealth becomes flexible, responsive, and purposeful when it is submitted to meaning rather than obsession. When people pursue wealth as the destination, decisions become reactive instead of inspired. Anxiety replaces clarity. Comparison replaces contentment. But when wealth serves a higher assignment, it enhances focus rather than dividing it. A tool works best when guided by skilled hands. Purpose trains those hands. Stewardship sharpens awareness of timing, restraint, and direction. Wealth amplifies whatever it touches, which is why character must lead before increase follows. Tool in immature hands creates damage, but in prepared hands it builds. Purpose prepares the heart so that wealth expands reach instead of weakening foundations. The desire for abundance is not wrong, it simply needs alignment. Wealth accelerates vision when vision exists before supply. It becomes fuel instead of distraction. This is why preparation often comes before provision. Stability must exist internally before expansion occurs externally. When wealth is expected to serve meaning, it arrived without chaos. When wealth is positioned as a tool, generosity becomes natural rather than forced. Giving flows from confidence, not obligation. You release without fear because supply is understood as renewable, not fragile. Tools are meant to be used, not stored. Purpose-driven wealth circulates rather than stagnates. It moves toward needs with intention, not impulse. It solves problems rather than creating dependency. This mindset removes guilt from abundance and replaces it with responsibility. Wealth no longer competes for attention, it cooperates with calling. Influence increases because trust remains stable. When wealth is guided by mission, it knows where to go and when to move. It responds to discernment rather than ego. Resource flows to places where it can produce fruit that outlives personal gain. This perspective transforms abundance into stewardship. Stewardship sustains blessing because it honors source and outcome simultaneously. Wealth as a tool protects the heart from distortion. Purpose acts as a filter that keeps priorities grounded. Without it, increase magnifies insecurity and confusion. With it, increase clarifies direction. When identity is settled, success does not threaten humility. Wealth becomes neutral in emotional weight because meaning already exists. Alignment prevents imbalance. You operate from gratitude rather than entitlement. Discipline becomes easier because vision governs appetite. Wealth loses the power to tempt when it no longer promises fulfillment. Fulfillment is already established through calling. This internal freedom creates stability external resources cannot provide. Tools obey those who know how to use them well. Wealth yields to purpose when purpose has been honored consistently. This understanding protects peace through growth. It allows expansion without exhaustion and influence without compromise. When wealth remains a tool, it responds to instruction. It arrives on time, departs when necessary, and multiplies when trusted. Security remains intact because faith, not finance, carries authority. This posture ensures continuity. What is stewarded well remains accessible. Wealth flows toward those who respect its function. It supports vision, reinforces impact, and extends reach beyond personal limitations. Goals magnify results, but only when guided intentionally. When purpose stays central, wealth remains obedient. It does not dictate direction, it follows it. This alignment allows abundance to increase without redefining values. Faith remains the source, purpose remains the compass, and wealth remains effective in fulfilling assignment. Psalm 112 is not merely a poetic expression or a historical promise written for another generation. It is a living covenant that speaks in the present tense. A covenant breathes, responds, and operates wherever faith gives it voice. It is alive because it is rooted in eternal truth, not temporary conditions. When the word says wealth and riches are in the house of the righteous, it announces identity before outcome. The covenant does not wait for perfection, it responds to alignment. Righteousness is not performance, it is position. Position grants access, access activates provision. This covenant speaks into households, decisions, vision, and legacy. It shapes atmosphere before it shapes results. Darkness does not intimidate this promise because light is already embedded within it. Psalm 112 establishes that the righteous are unshaken, undisturbed, and upheld even when uncertainty surrounds them. That stability is covenantal. It cannot be manufactured or imitated. It flows from relationship. This covenant is alive because it responds to faith with consistency. When believed, it engages. When spoken, it activates. When trusted, it manifests. A living covenant operates beyond emotional fluctuation. It remains effective when feelings change and circumstances shift. Psalm 112 anchors confidence in something stronger than visible evidence. It declares that favor, wisdom, and provision follow alignment, not effort. The covenant does not rely on external validation. It carries internal authority. Fear loses influence where covenant is understood. Doubt weakens when promise becomes personal. This covenant educates the heart before it rewards the hands. It builds assurance that allows the believer to move with calm authority. Stability becomes a testimony. Others notice resilience that cannot be shaken by trends or turmoil. The living nature of this covenant ensures continuity from generation to generation. It does not expire, diminish, or lose relevance. It adapts without changing its essence. As faith grows, understanding deepens. What once sounded symbolic becomes practical. What once felt distant becomes accessible. Covenant brings clarity, removing confusion from expectation and replacing it with confidence. Psalm 112 reveals that covenant establishes identity before manifestation. It calls the righteous generous, gracious, and upright before abundance is ever mentioned. Character is not an afterthought, it is the container that holds increase. A living covenant nurtures internal consistency so that external blessing remains sustainable. This is why instruction accompanies promise. Understanding protects flow. The covenant ensures that provision aligns with responsibility. It produces hearts that are willing to give, slow to panic, and steady in trust. Fear of lack dissolves because covenant reassures continuity. The righteous are not afraid of bad news because their heart is fixed. That fixed position is anchored in covenant awareness. When storms arise, covenant reminds the soul of stability. This awareness shapes response. Reaction becomes restrained. Decisions become measured. Confidence remains steady. A living covenant trains discernment, ensuring that blessing does not corrupt intention. It keeps vision clear and motives undivided. Covenant does not function in isolation. It creates rhythm. Psalm 112 introduces rhythm into life by aligning trust, action, and expectation. Blessing becomes predictable because alignment remains intact. Predictability does not limit God, it demonstrates His reliability. A living covenant establishes flow rather than chaos. It allows abundance to reach the house without disrupting peace. The righteous flourish not because they manipulate outcomes, but because they honor agreement. Covenant is agreement, mutual commitment. Heaven commits to supply and sustain. Humanity commits to trust and delight. This harmony produces endurance. Covenant life resists burnout because effort is partnered with grace. Strength replenishes faster than demand depletes. This stability attracts favor naturally. People recognize integrity, reliability, and calm assurance. Covenant produces quiet authority. Influence expands without self-promotion. Doors open without pressure. Alignment creates momentum. The covenant works because it is honored, not because it is forced. Psalm 112, being a living covenant, means it remains responsive. It meets obedience with outcome. It answers trust with provision. It rewards consistency with increase. Covenant awareness sharpens sensitivity to instruction. Daily life becomes an ongoing conversation rather than disconnected effort. You begin to see protection where chaos once threatened. Peace settles where anxiety once ruled. Provision aligns where uncertainty once lingered. Covenant keeps revelation fresh. Each encounter reveals another layer of trustworthiness. The promise unfolds progressively, meeting capacity as it expands. What is revealed at each stage matches growth. Covenant adapts without weakening. It remains alive by remaining anchored in truth. When trust deepens, manifestation follows. When delight remains, supply increases. Psalm 112 continues to speak because covenant does not retire. It engages continuously wherever faith chooses agreement. What you have just received is not simply a message, but a revelation woven together by faith, purpose, and covenant. You are reminded that nothing about your life is accidental, that your presence in this moment proves divine intention. Faith was set before you not as a theory, but as the access point that unlocks overflow when alignment replaces fear. You were shown that abundance responds to belief, and that provision flows where the heart remains steady, trusting, and anchored. Wealth was repositioned correctly, not as a destination to chase, but as a tool entrusted to hands shaped by purpose and guided by responsibility. When wealth serves assignment, it strengthens impact instead of distorting identity. It extends reach without compromising peace. You were also anchored in the truth that Psalm 112 is alive, active, and working today. This covenant speaks stability into uncertainty, light into darkness, and provision into every area of life where trust is honored. It revealed that righteousness is a position, not a performance, and that alignment invites favor naturally. The promise of sustained blessing, unshaken confidence, and generational impact is not reserved for a select few, but for all who choose to delight in the Word and walk in agreement with it. What you now carry is clarity that fear no longer governs your expectation, that past limitations do not define future capacity, and that obedience keeps doors open without strain. As you move forward, let faith remain your posture, purpose your compass, and covenant your foundation. Expect abundance without anxiety. Carry responsibility with confidence. Live aware that what flows to you is meant to flow through you. Stay aligned, stay grounded, and stay receptive to the unfolding of promises already assigned to your life. Thank you for receiving this word with an open heart. May peace guard your mind, favor surround your steps, and abundance meet you at every point of obedience. God bless you, and may your house flourish in light and increase.